Traffic congestion is the one word or the two words that plague every Marinite. For decades, traffic on US 101 up and north from the county line of Sonoma to the Golden Gate Bridge has been a plague on Marin. Former Caltrans engineer and past Mill Valley City Councilman Jerry Hawkey said in the early 1990s, if you think things are bad right now, just wait 10 or 15 years and this will be the good old days. Hawkey could really see the future. He was right. Now that traffic congestion has spread from 101 to the east-west lateral roads that link most of Marin, whether it be in Novato on Novato Boulevard, 3rd and 4th Streets in San Rafael, Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in central Marin, or Blythedale Avenue and Tiburon Boulevard in southern Marin, traffic has gotten worse. Now in the past 2 or 3 years, that traffic has backed up on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge to the extent that the evening commute backed up so far that it's impacting northbound traffic on US 101. It's Marin's grievance. It's something that everybody's talking about, and we're talking about it today on IJ Forums. And I'm delighted to have joined me on IJ Forums a person who deals with traffic each and every day of the year, Diane Steinhauser, Executive Director of the Transportation Authority of Marin, or TAM. Diane, welcome to IJ Forums.
Thank you much, Dick. Good
it's
to
really
be
a pleasure to have you here. I know you know this stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the one thing we tend to look at in Marin is ourselves. But is this traffic backup a uniquely Marin phenomena?
Oh, not at all. Actually, there was a brief moment in 2009 when we opened our new carpool lane where the freeway actually flowed free for a while, and that was a glorious year or so. But with the recovery of the economy all over the Bay Area, we're seeing significant congestion on many routes. We're currently 101's rated about 12th worst in the Bay Area in terms of our commute period traffic.
What's the cause?
The economy. I mean, we have a very strong economy. We are a pass-through county for strong economies in San Francisco. We have a return of both our professional and our service economy. So we're importing a lot of workers. They're coming across the Richmond Bridge. You mentioned the Richmond Bridge. Much more congestion than it used to be 10 or 15 years ago. And we're also seeing some bypass traffic from the Bay Bridge corridor. That is leading to significant congestion in Marin. We still have the phenomena of being a very popular recreational county. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of folks that leave their apartments in San Francisco and come here to recreate. We have very high traffic on Saturdays and Sundays also.
Is it an inherent problem? Is it something we're stuck with that there's nothing we can do about?
I don't believe that there's nothing we can do about it. I think we are adding some limited capacity. We're going to be advertising this new third lane on the Richmond Bridge coming up in about a month or two. It'll be about a year before that is open.
When do you predict?
August of 2017.
Okay.
We're going to have that third lane eastbound to help relieve traffic leaving Marin in the evenings. We can't grow our way out of traffic, but we can do what we call operational improvements. We can try and make things flow better, whether it's interchange improvements, left turns, right turns, traffic signal interconnection. We can provide people options, and we've been spending a lot of time in Marin trying to give people options to driving alone.
I just drove by the San Rafael Smart Station. It's going to open this fall.
Absolutely.
Early winter.
And that's one of our premier options that we hope to offer people is our rail system.
The Smart, if I'm not incorrect, is not going to be a solution to traffic. It's going to be an alternative to traffic. Do you think that's a fair way to phrase it?
I think for certain commuters, Smart's going to be a good option to relieve some of that pain of sitting in traffic. I think we have to do a combination of solutions, and Smart is one of them.
Okay. Well, Diane, it's a pleasure to have you on IJ Forums to help us explain a little bit. And the economic aspect of it is something I tend to forget. That I was in Buffalo, New York recently, and the freeways were empty. There's no economy in Buffalo, New York.
That's right. And, whether people can drive outside of the commute period, whether they can work from home, whether they can choose to take transit, either bus or rail, whether they can team up and carpool, vanpool, all of those are options that we're trying to offer people.
Well, the more options we have, the less frustration there will be. I wish you luck. I know that there's limited sources of funding, and I'm a bit fatalistic myself after living almost 40 years in Marin County, and prior to that, San Francisco, that we're going to have the old days come back. Hawkey was probably right. The good old days were back then, not now. Diane Steinhauser, thank you very much for being on IJ Forums.
Thank you, Dick.
How many times have you been stuck in traffic, even just today? Traffic seems to be the number one most aggravating issue confronting Marin residents. We hear about it all the time at the paper. We get letters to the editor, people write in commentaries. It's a tough nut to crack. Hi, I'm Robert Sterling, editor of the Marin IJ, and I want to invite you to go to our website where we have a collection of articles, commentaries, editorials, and more about the tough issue of traffic. Who knows, maybe there'll be some solutions sometime soon. Thank you for watching IJ Forums.
Welcome back to IJ Forums. I'm Dick Spotswood, politics and government columnist for the Marin Independent Journal. Traffic and transportation are our topics today. And in this segment of the program, we have two people that have been talking quite a bit about traffic and transportation over the years. Linda Jackson is with us today. She is a certified transportation planner, graduate of the University of Texas, the Longhorns, and she has served as a transportation planner for the City of San Rafael and for the Transportation Authority of Marin. But today she's back to the private sector in her role as a certified transportation planning consultant. She's a San Rafael resident and a member of the San Rafael Board of Education. Richard Hall is a graduate of Manchester Polytechnic in England. He's a blogger. He's a blogger in San Rafael, prominent, been all over our webpage, ij.com, as well as pretty much every other online facility that you have, talking about the changes that have taken place in Marin County, particularly as they relate to traffic, transportation, and planning. Linda, Richard, a pleasure to have you on IJ Forums to talk about a problem which I think, and I'm curious if you think, may be insoluble: traffic congestion in Marin. Solution? Impossible. What do you say?
Thank you, Dick. I love the opportunity to be here. I have to say that traffic's been in Marin County since post-World War II. I think of the viaduct through San Rafael and that effort that it took to build that. So it's definitely can be fixed and tweaked, but it's not going to go away. I think of 2008, a lot of traffic went away because the jobs went away. Jobs are back, traffic is back.
Richard, is traffic in Marin insoluble, or is it maybe just an inherent problem that we have to deal with in American suburban life?
I think you have to look at two horizons. In the short term, we're making our lives miserable for ourselves. Dick, you live in Mill Valley, and this is a petri dish for what we can look to see happening all across Marin. I think all of us know that the traffic in Mill Valley, especially during school pickup and drop-off, is absolutely horrendous. And what we're seeing is, instead of genuine solutions, we have, you said that citizens weren't angered by the local election results. I think the next 4 years, they're going to have a shock of their life, because Supervisor Sears has not been doing much to prevent traffic building up. In fact, Belvedere Place, we're seeing 600 more trips being added by a medical facility, and she's actually been recommending architects to the Branson School, which is going to add 6,500 daily trips to that area.
Last year I was challenged by basically a writer to say, come up with positive solutions. And I thought about it and I said, he's right. We need to, every time I criticize something, and as you both know, I've been critical at times in my column, I feel an imperative to give an alternative and positive, if it's possible.
Oh, and if I may.
Well, if I could just to frame that, because it's to both of you, I'll start with you, Richard. So it's positive. So I asked myself, okay, the status quo is unacceptable. Let's accept that. But what could be done to improve the situation, the positive? Richard, then Linda. Richard.
Well, first of all, I was shocked when Diane suggested that the train that's coming is the primary solution. That's going to take less than 0.2% of the traffic off the freeway at commute. The real solution is just being ignored by planners. I talked to MTC at the Planned Bay Area meeting, and it's about autonomous cars.
Okay.
So the four major, Ford, GM, Toyota, Nissan, all say they're going to have autonomous cars in production by 2020, 2021. By 2030, we have the CEO of Uber saying their entire fleet will be autonomous. And when you apply autonomous cars and buses to cities in conjunction with some transit, essentially the implications, according to the OECD, are that traffic congestion is near eliminated.
OECD
is the Organization for Economic Community and Development. It's, I think, 24 or more developed nations that have a think tank. They ran a simulation in the city of Lisbon, found out that once these autonomous cars and buses are put in conjunction with transit, parking issues are eliminated, traffic congestion is eliminated. But this is long term and this is coming. But 2030, we should see this. You'll just, instead of owning a car, it'll be just summoning an Uber, but it won't be driven by a human at all. What this will do is it will reduce the amount of congestion on our roads considerably, and those cars won't need to be parked. And so it frees up all the space in garages, it frees up all that street parking. But throwing over $1 billion in costs at smart, that's going to achieve nothing. We're not looking in the long term through the eyes of the Bay Area.
Linda,
Yeah.
so the question, not so much directly to Richard,
Right.
though I do want to get into the technology that's changing in transportation. But the fundamental question is, what can we do? What's the positive way forward to help us relieve this frustration that's grasping us up?
Right. And you framed the question right. There is absolute truth that suburban design will create a community that the traffic will drive the residents crazy. You see that it's been studied across the country, and you see that place after place. When you build your homes here, your apartments here, your jobs here, and your retail here, the only way you can get around to get that loaf of bread is to get in your car and drive there. The other situation that we have in Marin specifically and in the Bay Area is we have a booming economy. So we've added in the last 4 years 7,000 jobs. How many housing units have we built for those people who are working at those jobs? 455. So there's a very big discrepancy between the people who can live here and the people who can work here and how they get here.
But
What are the solutions,
that's
you
the
ask?
question.
That's the question.
I always worry, ideology is killing us.
Right.
Pragmatism we need. The ideology is troublesome.
So the answers are multiple, right?
That's what I'm looking for.
Number one, we can manage the traffic better. And you can see that with timed signals making a huge difference with traffic flow.
Tell me about that.
Well, in 3rd Street, 2nd, 3rd Street in San Rafael, those are time signals. You can actually get through downtown all the way over to Montecito Plaza without hitting a signal during
Some
the day.
people have been saying that's what Sir Francis Drake Boulevard needs.
That's right. It makes a tremendous difference. Otherwise, you're hiccuping through town. That's not any fun. Another one is to look at the fixes that can be made. So some people would say add another lane to 101 going north. We did that through Central San Rafael, if you remember, about 10, 12 years ago. Added another lane through Central San Rafael, made a difference in the traffic reduction ability to get through town. So, but there are right-hand turn lanes that can be added, longer lanes for left turn lanes. You can make it safer. The other solution is to look at ways to improve how you get around. So I'm pro-choice. It's good to walk, it's good to drive, it's good to ride a bike, it's good to take a scooter. You have to have a lot of ways to be able to get around for all, not just planning for me or you, but planning for all the population.
Richard mentioned something about autonomous cars, and when you listen to the futurist talk, he has an excellent point. The only thing is that some of the futurists say it's not 10 or 15 years down the road, it's 5, because they're moving very rapidly because of the economics of the stuff. What's that going to do? Is that realistic, and what will it do?
Well, the cars are happening now. You can buy a car that can park itself. You can buy a car that can pretty much drive itself down the freeway. So each time we buy a car, we'll have new technologies in it. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5, 10 years from now, the car that you have is going to be fairly autonomous, will drive on itself.
Richard, I'm going to extend the autonomous car debate just a bit, the topic, because it seems to me the autonomous car also has a positive impact on transit. Because when we're looking recently at the idea of feeder buses to SMART, it's very expensive to have feeder buses go a short time and always be available for trains, which are not going to come constantly. But if you eliminate the driver, if you take the employment out, and I can tell you at Golden Gate Transit, the biggest factor is the cost of labor. If you take that out, doesn't the bus become more efficient along with the car?
The autonomous car works in conjunction with transit. In fact, the OECD, when they did their simulation, did not presume to remove transit. They see it as a natural complement. Yes, it works as a feeder, but remember, with things like the smart train, we're talking about a train that leaves once every half an hour. Imagine, if you will, your car at home, your garage door would only go up once every half an hour, and you had to plan your life around a garage door that went up every half an hour. That's extremely inconvenient. And no matter how convenient that car is getting you to a train, if that train only goes once every half an hour, and it's going to be very hard on a single track line to make that train go more often than that, have you really achieved a solution?
Well, 2 points. One, the Golden Gate Ferry, which is, when I was on the British District, people said, oh, nobody's going to ride the ferry boat. And now the ferry's at capacity. It goes every half hour or so. That's working. But maybe the wrong word. Maybe the transit folks have oversold. This is my next question. Have the transit folks oversold what they could do? Years ago, when I was involved in the early days of what's now smart, wasn't smart then, we didn't talk about solutions. We just talked about it would be an alternative. And all of a sudden, people started to think it would be a solution to the freeway. And when that doesn't happen, will they not be very disappointed?
I think that there are 15,000 people that commute every day. It's a horrendous commute from Sonoma to here. And if you own a business or you're walking around town, you're never out of sight of a wanted, hired. Come on in and apply for a job. So the impact of not being able to live here and work here means that people have to drive. And the people who live in Sonoma are waiting for the train to start. That is going to be the premier commute, probably in competition with the ferry.
But the question is it a solution or is it just an alternative?
It'll be both. It's a solution for the people who will be taking the train.
Is it a solution for the motorist?
Well, if you decide to drive, you're making that choice and you'll be on the freeway.
Richard.
Is it a solution for the motorist? Well, transit use is in decline in Marin since 1990. That's the US Census has proven that fact. And yet we insist on funding these massively expensive alternatives, such as the train. I think it's anything from 529 million costs as spent to over 1.4 billion in cost when you include the bonds. And it's all fine and well to talk about this is a great solution, but when you look at the actual impact, so Portland is a great example city where the kind of solution Linda is talking about, where housing is built, where transportation is built, and it's presumed to be the solution. Well, just in 2015, TomTom, the GPS provider, did a survey, and guess what? They found that Portland, which is the 28th largest city in the US by population, has the 8th worst traffic congestion. It's the same as Chicago and Washington, D.C., despite over a decade or more of this kind of solution. And so the transit-oriented development has been coming trickled down, essentially, from the government policy. And I think it would be great if we could talk about things like the new legislation that has come through, like Senate Bill 743. And what that specifically says is, and it applies to Marin, it's kind of scary, is if you build a new development, you propose a new development such as alongside 101 like Windcup or Northgate Walk, essentially because it is within half a mile of that train or a bus stop that runs every 15 minutes in peak commute, then it shall be presumed to cause a less than significant transportation impact. In other words, you as a citizen of Mill Valley cannot protest this.
Well, we could get the whole topic of transit development, housing, but I'm really trying to focus more on the one thing that's driving people nuts. It's traffic. I think it drives you nuts. It probably drives you nuts, Linda. I think that there's a perception that the planning process is failing us. And there's a perception that the transportation process is failing us. I mean, people, frankly, want results. And I'm not sure results are deliverable. I mean, that's my frustration. So where is there a model, anywhere, US, UK, Canada, that both justifies both your positions? Tell me a town, a suburban town, where transportation related planning has worked. And Richard, tell me a community that's basically said, we're not going to do this.
I can talk right now.
Linda first, Richard then.
So I would say in Marin, we have 11 examples of towns where it works. We have cities that grew up without cars as the main way to get around. And our family has lived within walking distance of downtown San Rafael. My husband commutes, walks to the ferry transit center, takes the ferry, takes the 40 bus over to the East Bay for many years. It works. You can walk downtown. You don't have to be in a car for the whole weekend to go do your things. That and San Rafael built hundreds of units in downtown in the 1990s, early 2000s. There hasn't been anything new, so there's no choice for people to have that option to move to where they aren't going to be living a life dominated as riding around in automated cars.
Mill Valley works.
Mill Valley works.
Unless you want to
when
leave the
you get
city
out of
limits,
car.
then it doesn't work. My question is different, though. My question was, where in America, Europe, Canada, you're a certified transportation planner, where is the suburban region which is now resolved, or has now addressed this problem successfully?
I'll go back to the first statement, Dick. Suburbia is a design, a land use design, designed to drive people crazy in driving. So yes, you have traffic in suburban areas. It's just the way the area is designed.
Is there a model?
Yeah, Seattle had proposed it in 1990, but this kind of mindset is destroying and undermining the solution. So Seattle basically in 1990 had proposed that you don't impose new development unless you can handle it with the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And that's really the deal. When you move into a new town, isn't it reasonable that you expect that the elected officials and the folks above them, it's almost unspoken, you expect keep traffic congestion at reasonable levels. It's like a scale of A through F, with D as the failing grade. But no, what we're seeing is an undermining of this with a mentality of we can change this reality. We can reverse the trends to the car, but yet people are not reversing. The transit ridership's in decline.
Where in some parts of America, I was just reading about a governing magazine, a place outside of Chicago, and the name of the city escapes me, but it's this San Rafael-sized city where they were trying to address this by basically upping development, creating a big, intense downtown. Is there a place where this model has worked?
You can see cities across the country trying to do this, and where they're trying to do it is in the dead shopping centers. So the shopping centers where the sea of parking, the retail is no longer drawing people in. And there are places all the way from Florida to Washington, D.C., San Jose, Southern California. So this is a model where you're taking a large piece of land and making it a walkable neighborhood where people can actually live and have
those
an
are,
enjoyable
I think, I was just in Des Moines,
So,
and there's an effort to do that at Des Moines. It's there's very low employment at Des Moines, but the cost of living is very low. But it's an empty downtown, vacant. Planners had these walkways they built to link the buildings because of the cold in the winter. It was a brilliant idea in the 60s. Right. I have to do brilliant. It was award-winning. It killed retail downtown. It destroyed it. So downtown's dead. So where in a successful, a prosperous,
people will tell you that Portland is a lovely place to live. My daughter just moved there, went up there. I asked her, how's the traffic? Because she used to commute to San Francisco for her job. She said, there is no traffic in Oregon. So, her experience is wonderful. She lives in a neighborhood where she can take a bus or she can walk to get everything she needs. Seattle, my brother lives in Seattle. It's also a wonderful place where they have done infill design for walkable communities where people have the choice of how they want to get around. The key to this, Dick, is design, urban design, that what is built is going to fit in and look good and be something people would be proud to have in their community for the next 50 years.
Richard, do you sense there's that an urbanization of Marin is perhaps one of the answers to traffic congestion?
You mean we can build our way out of this traffic
However
congestion? I think that's as
yeah.
ridiculous as it sounds.
No, well.
Essentially, that is, it's a means to an end. And essentially what I think was happening is there's large development interests. We know that there's payments from development interests through various organizations to become a politician. One basically depends on campaign donations to fund one's campaign. And some of that money does come from those interests. And so what we've got to do is break out of this cycle. And does this development, does it reduce traffic? You yourself said in your article of several weeks ago that Marin does not have an imbalance in commuting into our county. In fact, we're almost an example to be followed, and yet we still have this problem.
Well, part of this, and I'd say to Linda and Richard, it just seemed to me in our decentralized world, San Francisco is a classic example of this. San Francisco has significant development, though restricted in many of its neighborhoods for political reasons. Mm-hmm. Same folks who want us to develop aren't so hot about in the Richmond or Sunset District, you'll find. with a huge influx of commuters coming into San Francisco. Even in San Francisco, what's the answer? Is there an answer? I mean, is that the mobility that's inherent in 21st century life, where we come into jobs or not? We don't work at American Can on 3rd Street for the rest of our lives. We're coming and going with different places, and our spouses are working now in different jobs. And this matrix seems to be confounding us. And I'm not a blamer on this. It just may be where we are.
San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and people come around the world to come visit it, and we love to go to San Francisco. It's a dense, walkable place to go, and so we can do similar at our scale in Marin. We have examples in every single town of how to do housing and to fit in. So on Sir Francis Drake, there's schools along there.
Let's talk about Sir Francis
Let's talk
Drake.
about that. There's schools along there. In one of the school districts, I just got an email from a superintendent that said she lost 2 first-year teachers. Excellent, because they don't want the commute from Sonoma anymore. They got homes in Sonoma and Napa. This is impacting our quality of life to not be able to have employees, quality employees work here. It's from doctors, teachers, all the way down to child care workers, to our gardeners that take care of our homes. You talk about Sir Francis Drake, there are improvements planned for that road, so you can walk it, you can bike it, and you can drive safely and calmly through there, and then not having it be a speedway through.
Is the priority, you're familiar with Sir Francis Drake priorities.
Yes.
Is the priority traffic relief, or is the priority current planned safety and crosswalks?
It's both.
What's the traffic
You want to
release?
get through. You want to get through it safely in a car in a timely way, and you also want to make it safe for the people who are walking and biking along there.
What's the traffic relief?
I'm sorry?
What's the traffic
The
relief?
traffic relief will be able to get through. It's the same as in Mill Valley. Mill Valley is terribly congested, has had traffic studies for decades about what to do. You can see the difference that school makes when it's out. 25% of the traffic is because of children, and Mill Valley is going to do the school bus program, which will make a big difference, I think, next year. You saw it in Tiburon, you see it in San Rafael with school buses. You also are making some synchronization for timing and some improvements at the 101 overpass or crossing. So all those other
synchronations for timing happened from your lips to God's ears, because that's not in the plan right now.
Wow.
Richard, thoughts? I mean, my frustration is the typical Marinites' frustration. I moved from San Francisco, where I lived as a younger person, because I wanted to live in a less dense environment. I don't want to deal with the traffic that I have to deal with in San Francisco or here.
Oh, it's getting worse. So what we're getting now is this urban design, and what we're doing is populating the center of our cities. And that's great, but the thing is, these cities, I was in Baltimore 3 weeks ago. A taxi driver of 20 years told me the traffic here is just insane. And the reason is they put lots of people into the center of the city, and now we have a 2-way evening commute. So you cannot have the lights coordinated to handle that. The roads cannot handle people going both directions.
Baltimore is a lovely place to live, though. You live there and you can get out and walk around and have a great time. So.
Well, we all have, probably, let me just kind of conclude by just saying, there are different versions of life. I spend some time every year in Manhattan, in the Village, really a dense part of the place. I love it there. And then I come back to Mill Valley and I look out at the trees, and I love it there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's lifestyles that appeal to one, the other, and the quandary we're going to face, not only here on IJ Journal, but Marin County, everywhere, is how do we reconcile the two? Linda, thank you for being on IJ Journal. Richard, thank you. I look forward to hearing more from both of you. Keep watching and reading the Marin Independent Journal.